This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
So that guy I met on eHarmony? Yeah. We're out together last night and I step off a curb and snap, heel breaks right off my shoe.
Oh, no.
So I say, hell with it. Take them off so I'm barefoot. And you'll never guess.
What?
He leans over, takes off his shoes and socks, and now we're both...
You're joking.
Amazing, right?
At eHarmony, you'll find someone you can be yourself with. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up for eHarmony today.
You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 130, Bucket List 2.0. I'm sure you've heard of a bucket list before, but does yours really ensure that you're creating the life that you want to? There are some other factors that you might want to consider in the context of your bucket list. Maybe it's your time for Bucket List 2.0. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode. Can you believe it is the very end of the year, the last Wednesday of 2023? I hope you are doing so great. How is your vagus nerve? Are you giving it the love it needs so it can make your life calmer? How was your Christmas? It goes by so fast. Are you all ready for the new year? Let's make your 2024 your best year yet. We'll start with an upgraded bucket list. First, let's talk a little bit about John DeLorean. You probably recognize his name. You might even know a little bit about him. I didn't. He was born in 1925 and worked for several automakers throughout his career. He was married on September 3rd, 1954. He managed the development of the Pontiac GTO, the Pontiac Firebird, the Pontiac Grand Prix, and the Chevrolet Vega. He was the youngest division chief in General Motors history at 40 years old. He had big goals and tons of accomplishments. One day in 1969, he visited the retired former president of General Motors, who was someone who he kind of aspired to be one day. He was shocked to find a retired, hollow shell of a man whose life seemed purposeless. He saw his own future in this man's irrelevance. He was so shaken that he created a mental list of things he wanted to have and do and was determined to get bigger and better. He was 44 at the time. He realized that he needed more money, more success, and more accolades. He settled for nothing but the best. He was driven. Because of this list of desired possessions and accomplishments, he divorced his wife of 15 years that year in 1969. Then he married a 20-year-old model on May 31st, 1969, when he was 44. He lost 40 pounds, dyed his hair, got plastic surgery, and started writing a novel about nuclear war. He divorced in 1972 and married another model in 1973. Her name was Christina. She was 23 years old and he was 48. He divorced her in 1985. He eventually married again February 9th, 2002, this time to a 39-year-old woman when he was 77. He believed he needed to rack up a litany of the best experiences and possessions. He didn't want to end up insignificant like the former GM president he had visited. He needed the best-looking women and the most luxurious lifestyle. He was hot stuff when he left General Motors in 1973 to start his own company, the DeLorean Motor Company. In 1981, he appeared in a magazine advertisement for Cuddy Stark whiskey with a caption that said, "1 out of every 100 new businesses succeeds. Here's to those who take the odds." I'm sure you're familiar with the DeLorean car because of the movie Back to the Future, which came out in 1985. I didn't know until now that DeLoreans were built in Belfast, Northern Ireland. The car had those famous gull-wing doors, which I've always thought were so cool, both in 1985 when I was in kindergarten and on the Tesla Model X, which came out when my kids were in kindergarten. The problem was that the uniqueness of the style didn't compensate for the high price, low horsepower, and poor performance. DeLorean left GM to start his company in 1973, and by 1982, 9 years later, only 7,000 DeLoreans had been made and only 3,500 of those had been purchased. In 1982, the British government discovered that half of the funds received as investments into DeLorean Motor Company in 1974, 23 million British pounds, had been transferred to a Panamanian bank account. John DeLorean was arrested in October of 1982 and the factory was seized by the British government. DeLorean was charged by the U.S. government in 1982 for trafficking cocaine following a videotaped sting operation in which undercover agents got DeLorean to agree to bankroll the selling and transport of 220 pounds of cocaine with an estimated street value of $24 million. Oops. In 1985, he was indicted on charges to defraud investors and commit tax evasion by diverting millions of dollars from his company to himself. He was acquitted. In 1999, he had to declare bankruptcy after fighting 40 legal cases and was forced to sell his 434-acre estate in New Jersey. Guess who bought it? Donald Trump. I thought that was a little interesting aside. DeLorean apparently became a born-again Christian somewhere toward the end of his life, and he died of a stroke on March 19, 2005 at the age of 80. His tombstone has a picture of a DeLorean with the doors open on it, which I think is pretty great, and he loved the fact that the car was immortalized by Back to the Future. So, what does this cocaine trafficking, model marrying automaker have to do with your bucket list? For a long while there, he had it all. He had a vision of all the things he wanted in life, and he made a way to acquire those things. He was checking things off his list. Opulence, extravagance, fame, fortune, privilege, distinction. All the good stuff. I'm sure you know what a bucket list is, but just in case, it's a list of the achievements and experiences you want to have in your lifetime before you kick the bucket. I had never really heard the term until the movie The Bucket List came out in 2007, but now you hear it all the time. It's a normal thing for people to make small talk about. What is or isn't on your bucket list? Have you thought much about your bucket list? Do you have an actual written list? Is it inspiring to you to have a list of items, experiences, and possibly people you want to collect before you die? Does your list exist because you'll feel empty and unfulfilled unless you achieve what's on the list? What if you check off all your bucket list items and end up like John DeLorean? Would your list have served its purpose? What is your bucket list's purpose? I've never sat down and written out an actual bucket list, at least not before preparing for this episode. I have now, but I also never really thought about the purpose of my abstract conceptual list. It's just what you do. You have a bucket list, things that we think are important for us to do. If we slow down and think about it, bucket lists can help us create a life that we believe to be memorable. Something really good they can do for us is highlight the finiteness of life. We might only have 3 Thanksgivings left with our parents still alive, or 1 more Christmas with our kids still at home. 6 more summers till our favorite vacation spot is underwater due to polar ice caps melting. I don't know. It's a way to make sure you don't get to the end of your life and think, no way, I can't die. I haven't swam with dolphins yet. And a way to feel like you're making progress and doing meaningful things while you have the chance. I think that's great. So, what's on your bucket list? That reminds me of the, what's in your wallet? What's on your bucket list? I would love to know. I love hearing things that people have always dreamt of doing. According to bucketlist.net, the top 50 most popular bucket list items in order are: see the northern lights, go skydiving, get a tattoo, go on a cruise, swim with dolphins, get married, go scuba diving, buy a house, run a marathon. Number 10 is the same as number 2, skydiving. See the Egyptian pyramids, go to the Grand Canyon, write a book, go ziplining, ride an elephant, donate blood, visit every continent, go whitewater rafting, learn to surf, ride in a gondola in Venice, go to Paris, go parasailing, send a message in a bottle, ride in a hot air balloon, go to New York, have kids, go to Disney World, fly first class, go to Australia, fall in love, go on an African safari, sleep under the stars, go skinny dipping, walk on the Great Wall of China, go to Hawaii, go bungee jumping, take a random flight to a spontaneous destination, visit all 50 states, learn sign language, travel the world, go to Greece, experience zero gravity, go zorbing, learn the guitar, go to Las Vegas, go whale watching, go to Italy, go to Ireland. Number 49 is the same as number 36, bungee jumping. And lastly, ride a camel. Have you done some of these things before? I've done 16 of those 48 items. I think it's hilarious that donate blood is one of the items, and it's pretty high up there. Why? I mean, I think it's a good thing to do and everything, but I wouldn't think of it as bucket list material. Neither is going to Vegas. I think I'd enjoy donating blood more than going there. I could care less about Disney World, that's for sure, and I could happily die without learning to surf or scuba dive. And I've heard that riding an elephant is cruel, so I don't want to be cruel. 2 of the top experiences on my bucket list are there, though: taking a spontaneous flight to a random destination and seeing the northern lights. I'm semi-obsessed with that one. My mom grew up in Sweden, and I once asked her, "Did you ever see the northern lights?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, all the time." Kind of like, that old thing. How do you think you'd feel if you got to the end of your life and had done all of the things on your list? You rode a camel, sent a message in a bottle, walked on the Great Wall of China, went skinny dipping and parasailing, hopefully not at the same time, and learned sign language. I think the idea is that you would feel fulfilled, like you really lived. That's a beautiful thing. I for sure want you to feel like you really lived and you didn't limit any of your options by allowing your strength and vitality to decline unnecessarily. But is going bungee jumping or getting a tattoo going to fulfill your heart's deepest desire? Maybe. I think more important than all of the what's on your bucket list are the whys. Why do you want to ride a camel or go to Paris? Why do I want to see the northern lights so much? I think that feeling of awe is the best feeling in the world. And being under a big open sky and connected to the cosmos and experiencing the natural beauty of science that's only available for a very brief period of time in a remote location is about as good as it gets. We're super conditioned to go after money and status, to collect symbols of our importance. A Ferrari will make us happy, no a Bugatti, a big house with high-end furniture, trips to exotic locations, notoriety, business awards, followers. That's the new thing people want, right? Something to prove that we're somebody worth paying attention to. We created something from nothing. That's cool. The question, I guess, is, are those symbols of your specialness serving your deep purpose in life? Do you know what your deep purpose in life is? Is it to collect stuff? To have a huge estate and trade in your spouse of 15 years for someone half your age? To have fun? What about to be happy? That's something we hear all the time as our only wish for the people we care about. I just want them to be happy. It sounds sweet, but is that the best we can do for ourselves? And would 23 million British pounds in a Panamanian bank account make us profoundly happy? Or running a marathon or going to Luxor? They might. Martin Seligman is the father of positive psychology. He says, "I used to think that the topic of positive psychology was happiness, that the gold standard for measuring happiness was life satisfaction, and that the goal of positive psychology was to increase life satisfaction. I now think that the topic of positive psychology is well-being, and that the gold standard for measuring well-being is flourishing, and that the goal of positive psychology is to increase flourishing." This theory is very different from authentic happiness theory. Well-being is a construct, and well-being, not happiness, is the topic of positive psychology. Well-being has 5 measurable elements that count toward it. Positive emotion, happiness, and life satisfaction fit here. Engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. End quote. Seligman is super awesome, and he's a big part of the VIA character strengths assessment. If you haven't done that yet, you should. I'll put a link in the show notes or you can go to VIA character strengths assessment. Our strengths and virtues are what drive our engagement and help us flourish. He says that finding ways to deploy your personal strengths leads to more engagement, more positive emotion, more meaning, more accomplishments, and better relationships. That's a boost in everything that contributes to well-being, so you might want to pay attention to your strengths and possibly include opportunities to use them on your bucket list 2.0. I don't know a lot about Buddhism, but I know a little bit, and I've been reading a really cool book that my husband read and told me I would like, which I do, about a husband and wife who take their 2 young little boys to live in a Buddhist monastery in sort of Tibet, but really India, for 3 months. Life there was not at all like I expected. The book has been super interesting and surprising. The effects on their 6-year-old son, who has high-functioning autism, were not surprising to me, but very cool anyway. It's called Blue Sky Kingdom if you're looking for a good nonfiction storybook. I only mention that because, as you probably know, Buddhists are big on centering their lives around the concept of impermanence and non-attachment. There's a part in the book where 4 monks work all day, every day, for 6 days straight, making a shockingly beautiful mandala, which is a richly colored, intricate piece of art with gorgeous pattern and symmetry made out of colored sand. It's extremely painstaking and difficult to do with no room for error, and it's amazing to see. As part of their religious ceremony, they dump it and let all the sand slide off into the river in a big brownish-purple pile that gets scattered and carried downstream. Part of the same Holy Week or whatever it was, the head monk spends 6 days carving an elaborate and lace-like beautiful statue out of yak butter, which obviously is also impermanent and not something you can remain attached to for very long. There's a lot we can learn from Buddhism to create better lives. Impermanence and non-attachment are at the forefront. I think having cool things and experiences is awesome, and wanting cool things and experiences is awesome. Maybe even writing them on a physical list of things we want to do before we kick the bucket. Sounds good. But I also think it would probably be a little more awesome if we could do so with a certain level of non-attachment, like wanting something without caring that much whether or not we get it. Kind of weird. In his awesome book that I listened to twice in a row because I liked it so much, Arthur C. Brooks talks about modern culture shaping us all into what he calls dissatisfied homo economicus. And I think it's brilliant. He talks about spending the first half of our lives building up and adding to ourselves in an attempt to create something special, but that the second half of our lives would be well spent chipping away all the stuff and worldly wants to get down to who we really are. It's under there somewhere. Adding more stuff and worldly wants in the second half of our life, maybe in the form of a really impressive bucket list, won't make us happier or feel more fulfilled. It's removing wants and things, or the attachments to things, that brings us joy. In his book, which, by the way, is called From Strength to Strength, I highly recommend it, Arthur Brooks makes the point that we're often told to make an inventory of our bucket list once a year on our birthday as a way to reinforce our aspirations and making sure that we're getting done the things that we want to do before we die. It's a good way of reminding ourselves that our life is impermanent and finite, and we only have a certain number of birthdays left, so we better do some of the stuff on our list before our next birthday. All good there. Plus, it's briefly satisfying. It gives you a little burst of dopamine to write out all the things you want and imagine getting them. Awards, praise, exclusive experiences, beautiful belongings. It's fun. He recommends what he does, which he calls his reverse bucket list. He says, each year on my birthday, I list my worldly wants and attachments: money, power, pleasure, and honor. I try to be completely honest. I don't list things I don't really want, like a boat or a house on Cape Cod. Rather, I go to my weaknesses, which usually involve the admiration of others. I'm embarrassed to admit that, but it's true. I imagine myself in 5 years. I'm happy and at peace. I'm enjoying my life for the most part. I'm satisfied and living a life of purpose and meaning. I imagine saying to my wife, I have to say that I'm truly happy at this point in my life. I then think of the forces in this future that are most responsible for this happiness. My faith, my family, my friendships, the work I'm doing that is inherently satisfying, meaningful, and that serves others. Next, I go back to my bucket list. I consider how these things compete with the forces of my happiness. for time, attention, and resources. I ponder how empty they are by comparison. I imagine myself sacrificing my relationships to choose the admiration of strangers and the results down the line in my life. With this in mind, I confront the bucket list. At each item, I say to myself, this is not evil, but it will not bring me the happiness and peace I seek. I simply don't have time to make this my goal. I choose to detach myself from this desire. Finally, I go back to the list of things that will bring me real happiness. I commit to pursuing these things with my time, affection, and energy. This exercise has made a big difference in my life. It might help you too. End quote. Isn't that so good? I think it's so much more useful than a bucket list of typical worldly wants. Things Homo economicus has been conditioned to think will make us happy. I would invite you to go through his reverse bucket list process if you feel like it will help you. Detach yourself from the desire for things that won't help you create a life of deep satisfaction. I've taken his idea and combined it with a few other ideas to make it my own. I'm calling it Bucket List 2.0. I went through it myself and found it useful, so I would love for you to give it a try if you think it will help you. Go to www.healthcouragecollective.com/bucket. And if you don't see it there right away, you can go to healthcouragecollective.com, click on Work With Me, and click on Free Resources and find Bucket List 2.0. Get your free Bucket List 2.0 guide there. It's a fillable PDF, so you can just type right in there, or you can print it if you want to. Start with all of the things that you really want, whether you're proud of them or not. This is the fun dopamine generating part. Everything you want to have and accomplish, write it all out. Next, skip the 2 columns and go down to the next section. Do the exercise of imagining it's 2033 and you're 100% satisfied and living a life of purpose and meaning. List out all of the things that are responsible for that felt sense of well-being. There's a good chance that using your personal character strengths will be what helps you to flourish. Be sure to fill out the section about your engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievements. These play a big role in your sense of well-being, aka flourishing. Next, go back up to your original bucket list in column 2 and put the feeling that each item on your bucket list will deliver to you. Then go down and write the list of feelings you're looking to generate in the next section. Do you notice a theme here? I had fun coming up with this guide, and as I did this myself, I noticed I really am looking to feel a lot more adventure and spontaneity in my life, and some other things that I'm not super proud of, like validation, and some that I do want to keep, like love and connection. It was good to just be aware of the why and the feelings driving the desire. Okay, so you've got your bucket list 1.0, the feelings you want each item to generate for you, and your list of things that will drive true meaning and purpose in your life, including how you will engage with life, what your relationships will be like, what gives your life meaning, and what achievements you want to achieve. Not sure how else to say that. Now's the fun part. How do you integrate all of this? Look through the section of things that drive your satisfaction with your life 10 years from now, and then go through your bucket list 1.0 and imagine that pursuing each item will come at the expense of the things on the flourishing list. Is it worth it? Then mark that down in the 3rd column. Detach or hold it tightly, or anything else that's useful to you. That's how I did it. Purposefully detach yourself from desires that don't align and commit to things that do. Remember too, like we just barely talked about in episode 123, not to pursue things that you don't actually have control over, like your kids getting a college degree or getting married or other people inviting you to do things or give you things. You can be the kind of person who deserves an award or invitation, but you can't control other people's opinions or choices. Now fill out your section of things you have detached yourself from. You're still open to receiving them, but they're not worth your effort and affection at the sacrifice of other things. There's your reverse bucket list. Now all that's left is your last section, your bucket list 2.0. I left you 24 spaces there just because I ended up with 23 items when I did mine, and that felt pretty complete. List out the things that you want to keep and reword them if that feels right to you to most closely align with what is on your flourishing list. Lastly, I think it's worth your time to look through your list of feelings and possibly the engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievements, and see how you can generate those feelings now, especially the ones that you have listed a ton of times. How can you infuse a little bit of awe, adventure, freedom, connection, or contribution into your life right now in small doses without having to do these huge things on your list. I started a couple of months ago putting window shopping adventure travel once a week and going on a personal mini adventure once a month on my list of things to do. I set a timer for 5 minutes once a week and I look at travel pictures and posts on Pinterest. As you can imagine, it's really fun and I've learned about some cool places I had never heard of that wouldn't be too hard to go, like Painted Hills, Oregon. And I've become super interested in pictures of Croatia for some reason. So cool. I just pulled up my Pinterest board and it's 98% pictures of castles and 2% pictures of Valais black-nosed sheep. They're the best. They even have black knees and black feet. They're about the cutest things I've ever seen, including my own human babies. Sorry, boys. They won't listen to this, but they also would not be at all surprised to hear that. They're well acquainted with my love of lambs and goats. Woolly sheep aside, I think it's worth your time to list out a few ways you can bring some of those feelings into your life right now in small ways as you gather the resources to create the bigger experiences. Okay, so how is your bucket list 2.0? Do you love it? Does it feel right? Less of an infatuation feeling and more of a feeling of true love and joy? Will it lead you to your deathbed feeling like you really lived? Does it give you a sense of urgency to act now to be your best self without making you feel like you've somehow fallen behind? If you're up for it, I would love for you to share your favorite bucket list 2.0 ideas with me, or some of your reverse bucket list items, the things that you've decided to detach yourself from. You can email them to me at healthcouragecollective@gmail.com if you're feeling brave. I think it's super fun and inspiring to see what matters to people. Even though it's not the most deeply meaningful thing, I decided to leave the last-minute spontaneous flight thing on my list because I think it sounds fun. But I have some less sexy things on there now that mean more to me than some of the things I've decided to detach from, like owning a second home in a different location. Things like equanimity and seeing the good in everything, especially the struggles. I hope that you'll create your own bucket list 2.0 and use it to create the life that you want to live and one that you'll be proud to look back on. Remember to download your free guide at www.healthcouragecollective.com/bucket and send me your favorite ideas. I would love it if you would share this episode with someone you think might enjoy up-leveling their bucket list. Next week, we're going to talk about your endothelium. Until then, don't agree to transport 220 pounds of cocaine in an effort to collect more stuff. See if detaching from some of your wants might help you create more of what you really want, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed